The echo of missing knowledge. Have you ever wondered how much of our past has truly survived, and how much has quietly disappeared? Not the monuments, not the ruins we can still touch, but something far more fragile and infinitely more dangerous to lose: knowledge. Across the old world, from the fog-covered steppes of Eurasia to forgotten cities buried beneath sediment and empire, stories keep surfacing. Stories of vast repositories of wisdom, libraries older than nations, archives older than religions, monumental scriptoria carved into stone that have simply vanished. Not destroyed in events we all know about, not burned in the famous fires that fill our textbooks, but erased in ways historians still cannot fully explain. There are gaps so large, so systematic, and so eerily consistent across continents that they form a pattern that points toward something once global, and then deliberately buried. This is the mystery of the vanished libraries of the old world, a silent disappearance of knowledge that reshaped civilizations and erased entire chapters of human history, including the knowledge attributed to the civilization many now call Tartaria. Chapter 1. The Pattern of Erasure. Before we ask what was erased, we have to understand how it disappeared. The destruction of knowledge is not new. History is littered with tales of burned scrolls, shattered tablets, ruined archives, and broken memory. But the disappearances tied to the old world, and especially to regions once linked to Tartaria, do not behave like random tragedy. They behave like a quiet, coordinated erasure. Not one event, but dozens, spread across centuries, occurring in regions that were once centers of learning, administration, astronomy, engineering, and cartography. And when you line up the timelines, something uncanny appears. Across Persia, the Caucasus, Central Asia, Siberia, Eastern Europe, even parts of northern India, records point to a narrow historical window when libraries went dark, archives fell silent, and entire chains of written tradition simply stop. Not frayed over time, not gently replaced, cut. Often, there is no battlefield, no invading army, no catastrophic fire. Only this. The knowledge is gone, but the buildings remain. The archives vanish, but the city survives. Specific materials disappear, while valuables, icons, and even mundane objects are left untouched. It's as if someone walked in quietly, knew exactly what to take, and then left, without leaving visible damage. This is not accidental loss. It looks like harvesting. And when the same pattern repeats across thousands of kilometers within the span of only a few generations, it begins to look less like history and more like policy. Chapter 2. Ghost Libraries of the Old World. To see the outline of what was taken, we travel into what used to be the heartland of this mystery. Eurasia, the supposed domain of the civilization we call Tartaria. For centuries, travelers, early scientists, and imperial agents wrote of remarkable centers of learning scattered across the steppe and beyond, underground chambers carved with uncanny precision, fortified scriptoria along trade routes, circular stone libraries aligned to the stars, monastic complexes that preserved astronomy, geometry, medicine, hydrology, architecture. Many of these sites exist in obscure travelogues, royal reports, and forgotten archives of European and Asian states. But when modern expeditions tried to find them, they ran into the same chilling reality. The architecture is there, the knowledge is not. Rooms that should echo with shelves and scrolls are empty. Stone niches clearly cut for tablets or codices are scraped clean. Central reading halls stand intact, their acoustic design obviously deliberate, yet not a single tool, manuscript, or device remains. These are ghost libraries. The body of the archive survives. The mind is gone. In some sites, the stonework shows signs of being cleared long after construction, as if generations used them and then someone came later, removed everything and left the shell behind. From the steppe to the Caucasus, from Anatolia to northern India, the same gesture repeats. The room remembers what it once held, but its memory has been emptied. When you map these locations, another pattern appears. They are not isolated, random institutions. They form a network, a web of knowledge hubs that suggest a civilization obsessed with information, engineering, and cosmic order. A network consistent with the idea of a broader Tartarian culture, one that connected regions we now treat as separate, unrelated worlds. Yet, almost every trace of their intellectual output is missing. It is as if the world was allowed to inherit the architecture, but not the content. Chapter 3. Architecture as a memory without books. Even when the books are gone, the buildings still speak. Their stones remember their purpose. In several Old World ruins, architectural details reveal what these complexes once stored, and how advanced they really were. 1. Multi-level subterranean vaults. Deep chambers carved below ground indicate careful climate control. Perfect for clay tablets, metal plates, mineral-based inks, sensitive instruments. Today, explorers descend into these vaults and find nothing. Just empty levels of storage architecture built for a collection that no longer exists. 2. Geometrically precise alcoves. Some sites feature stone recesses arranged in spirals, grids, or harmonic ratios. It looks less like basic shelving and more like a three-dimensional index, a spatial catalog system. Every niche is empty, not broken, not repurposed, empty on purpose. 3. Astronomically aligned rotundas. Reading halls aligned to solstices and equinoxes, where shafts of light once illuminated specific points at specific times of year, hint at a deep marriage of astronomy, architecture, and knowledge. The design is still there, the content is not. 4. Hydraulic foundations. Some of these complexes sit above intricate water systems, channels, resonance cavities, pressure regulators, like the climate-controlled archives and data centers of their age. The water still moves, the regulation still works. Only the knowledge is missing. And then there is another unsettling tier. Beneath many ancient cities, archaeologists find sealed chambers with perfect ventilation shafts, drainage systems, catalogue-like niches, and immaculately clean floors. Rooms that should hold something, yet contain nothing. As later construction rises above them, these empty archives become buried under new streets and palaces, as if entire eras of memory were paved over. Sometimes the new empires literally build their capitals on top of these forgotten vaults. Foundations of iconic buildings rest on masonry from another age, stonework more advanced than the structures sitting on it. The question hangs in the air. Are these just convenient basements, or are they the empty servers of a previous civilization's global archive? Chapter 4. The knowledge that vanished. So what exactly was taken? We can't open the lost libraries, but we can examine the echoes they left behind. From scattered fragments, citations in unrelated texts, and the rare manuscripts that slipped through the purge. Researchers have assembled a ghost inventory of the erased knowledge. It seems to include advanced engineering far beyond local context. References to pressure-based water systems, polygonal masonry and seamless megastructures, long-range acoustic design, energy distribution through atmosphere or ground. Knowledge too advanced and too consistent to belong to isolated cultures. Astronomical records with uncanny precision tables, tracking planetary cycles, eclipses, and precessions, more accurate than many medieval charts. Some suggest a grasp of long timescales we barely model today. World maps that should not exist. Descriptions of grand maps, global projections, star atlases, ancient topographies referenced in China, Persia, India, Russia, and Europe. They were said to be mathematically precise, globally scaled, astronomically aligned. Some showed landmasses discovered centuries later. Others depicted coastlines that match pre-sea level rise scenarios. Yet none of these master maps survive. Metal books and indestructible codices. Across Central Asia, the Balkans, the Caucasus, northern India, Siberia, and the Middle East, a few extraordinary artifacts appear. Bound plates of bronze, copper, lead, gold, or unknown alloys, engraved with symbols, diagrams, star charts, mechanical designs. Metal doesn't burn, doesn't rot like parchment, yet these objects surface only as isolated survivors. A buried cache here, a lone plate in a private collection there. If Tartaria, or an earlier global civilization, stored its highest knowledge on metal, then the near total absence of such codices suggests something more than natural loss. It suggests targeted extraction. Architectural blueprints without architects. Later scribes quote engineering diagrams that seem out of place in their own cultures. Load-bearing walls designed with harmonic ratios, domes tuned for resonance, foundations aligned with magnetic lines, drainage for long-term humidity control. The knowledge is there. The names of the original architects are not. The techniques survive. The civilization that developed them does not. Taken together, these fragments point to one conclusion. What vanished was not just religious or literary knowledge, but the technical backbone of an advanced, globally connected civilization. A civilization whose existence would shatter our official timeline. Chapter 5: Scripts, Languages, and Broken Timelines. One of the strangest aspects of this mystery is not just that the books are missing, but that the writing systems themselves are gone. In many regions, the spoken language survives, the folklore survives, the local architecture survives, but the script, the alphabet, the characters, the glyphs disappears completely, not slowly evolving, not merging with other systems, simply removed. Whole alphabets vanish in a period that, historically speaking, is incredibly short. It's the equivalent of waking up tomorrow and discovering that Latin, Arabic, Sanskrit, Cyrillic, Chinese, Greek, and Hebrew no longer exist. Not banned, not suppressed. Physically gone. No inscriptions, no manuals, no teaching tradition. At the same time, across Eurasia, Africa, and the Middle East, written records show a strange break in continuity. Monasteries with centuries of archives stop writing. Cities with annual records suddenly fall silent. Scientific schools vanish from the historical record. Sometimes history resumes decades later, sometimes centuries later. Sometimes it never resumes. Mainstream explanations list wars, plagues, invasions, fires. But in many of these places, no such catastrophe can be found. The more unsettling answer is this: the archival tradition itself was removed. When you delete a civilization's script, you delete its ability to read its own past. You erase the bridge between generations. In the wake of this erasure, new languages and writing systems appear, strangely fully formed. Mature grammar, complex vocabulary, no visible written ancestors. It looks less like natural evolution and more like emergency reconstruction, as if entire populations were forced to rebuild their reality from oral fragments, broken memory, and whatever scraps survived the purge. This linguistic reset is the cultural equivalent of formatting a hard drive. Chapter 6. The Shadow Archivists and the Great Removal. Whenever knowledge disappears, someone is usually there to move it. Across the old world, there are recurring legends of secret custodians, never named, always implied, whose sole task was to relocate knowledge in times of crisis. Some traditions call them shadow archivists, others simply the keepers. In older Siberian stories, the ones who carry light. They appear in folktales from Mongolia, Uzbekistan, Persia, Armenia, the Baltic, the Caucasus, the Altai. Different cultures, different languages, the same pattern. A disaster is coming. War, flood, celestial disturbance, political collapse. A silent group arrives by night. They do not take gold. They do not take idols. They take scrolls, tablets, metal-bound codices, strange instruments. They pack them in crates, stone chests, or sealed containers, and vanish. Sometimes the legends say they head east, sometimes west, sometimes into the mountains, sometimes underground. The city remains, the ruins remain, but the library is gone. Modern scholars call this myth, yet the consistency of the motif across thousands of kilometers among societies that allegedly never coordinated suggests something more. Parallel to these stories, imperial archives from the 17th to 19th centuries reveal secret acquisition programs. Agents sent to remote regions tasked with collecting ancient documents, prioritizing technical knowledge, engineering, cosmology, hydrology, architecture, maps. They often burned whatever they did not take. Multiple empires did this simultaneously: Russian, British, Ottoman, Qing, Austro-Hungarian, and others. Publicly, they claimed to be preserving knowledge. The patterns suggest something else: a global confiscation of whatever remained of a previous civilization's intellectual legacy. If Tartaria existed as a vast civilizational zone rather than a neat modern state, then this may have been the final act, a coordinated effort to extract, centralize, and silence its knowledge before rewriting the map of the world. Chapter 7. Vaults beneath mountains and seas. If the knowledge was removed, where did it go? Some clues point downward. Across the Altai, the Caucasus, the Urals, and the Carpathians, explorers and local traditions speak of ancient tunnels and chambers carved directly into bedrock. Symmetrical vaulted halls, fitted stone doors weighing tons, complex ventilation shafts, water channels that regulate humidity, temperature-stable depths ideal for storing delicate materials. In some of these mountain systems, archaeologists find empty stone shelves, the same dimensions and spacing as those in surface-level ghost libraries. Empty. Waiting. Local elders tell stories of deep rooms and lower halls, of ancestors who carried boxes of metal and tablets into the mountain, sealed the doors with molten stone, and left as the earth swallowed the light. If the legends hold any truth, the mountains may hide sealed repositories, knowledge vaults designed never to be found by outsiders. The sea tells a similar story. Around ancient ports of the Black Sea, the Caspian, the Mediterranean, remnants of submerged docks and coastal settlements suggest that parts of the old world are now underwater. Divers sometimes find smooth stone floors, column bases, carved recesses that look eerily like document storage. But again, no documents. Maritime records from certain eras mention ships carrying sacred cargo, chests of wisdom, maps of the older world. Many of these vessels vanish from the record without wreckage, without survivors. Were they intercepted, sunk, or guided to hidden islands, underwater caves, and drowned cities where their cargo could never be casually retrieved? Mountains and seas have one thing in common: they keep secrets very well. Chapter 8: Empires, Academies, and the Silent Inheritance. While the old world's libraries were going dark, something else was happening, far from the steppe and its ghost archives. In the rising imperial centres, Moscow, Istanbul, Vienna, Beijing, Paris, London, ruling powers began building their own grand libraries and academies. Almost overnight, we see new cataloguing systems, centralised royal archives, state-sponsored scientific academies, rapid advances in mathematics, astronomy, engineering, and navigation. On paper, this is the age of rebirth and enlightenment. But under the surface, the timing is suspicious. The catalogues these empires created often show fully formed classification systems appearing without local precedent, entire categories marked as forbidden, restricted, or court only, entries for books and treatises that no longer exist, ghost volumes in pristine catalogues. At the same time, the great academies suddenly bloom with innovation. Geometry leaps forward, astronomical models sharpen, navigation becomes precise. Complex architectural feats reappear after a supposed dark age. Historians call this genius inspiration, cultural awakening. Another, less comfortable interpretation exists. These institutions were not inventing from scratch, they were assimilating. They may have been working from confiscated fragments of an older knowledge system, absorbing Tartarian or pre-Tartarian material into a new imperial narrative, while stripping it of its origin. This would explain breakthroughs that appear out of nowhere, techniques disconnected from local tradition, documents with no identifiable author, date, or linguistic lineage. In other words, the world didn't suddenly get smarter. It may simply have rebranded someone else's legacy. Chapter 9: Traces in Plain Sight, Continuity Without a Name. Even after such a massive erasure, some things are hard to completely remove. Subtle threads of continuity survive, where most people never think to look. Architectural ratios and harmonics, from Central Asian mausoleums to Eastern European cathedrals, from steppe shrines to imperial government buildings, the same geometric fingerprints appear. Repeating 3.7 resonance ratios, golden sections embedded in domes and chambers, harmonic spacing of columns, urban layouts aligned to solstices or star paths. These are not accidental. They hint at a shared architectural language, one now divorced from its original textbooks. Identical symbols in unrelated cultures. Across Eurasia and beyond, the same strange symbols appear, cut into megaliths, drawn in manuscripts, woven into textiles, carved into wooden beams. Always with similar geometry, often with similar implied meaning, as if the underlying mental model survived, even when the libraries that once explained it were gone. Myths of a knowledge-bearing people. From Siberia to the Adriatic, from Mongolia to Anatolia and the Caucasus, stories repeat. A golden age, a fall, scholars who flee, sealed libraries, scattered wisdom. Different languages, same story. It sounds like trauma passed down through folklore, the cultural memory of a real civilizational collapse. And then there is the paperwork. For centuries, maps and encyclopedias reference a vast region called Tartaria, not as a small kingdom, but as a wide civilizational zone. Then, in the 18th and 19th centuries, the word begins to vanish. Atlases are redrawn, classifications change, Tartaria dissolves into a patchwork of new labels. No massive war, no universal treaty, no grand public debate, just an administrative erasure. At the same time, the last traces of certain scripts fade, acquisition programs end, and the new imperial historiographies harden into official timelines. A name disappears, and with it, the possibility of asking the most dangerous question. What if the knowledge that built the old world did not belong to the empires that now claim its ruins? Chapter 10. The Convergence of Clues. On their own, any of these details could be dismissed. A missing library, a lost script, an odd basement beneath a palace, a folk tale about hidden books. But when you overlay them, a single story begins to emerge. Physical libraries vanish, leaving empty rooms and clean niches behind. Writing systems disappear, making whatever survives unreadable. Grand maps of the world are referenced, but never found. Metal books and technical codices surface only as stray fragments. Empires launch simultaneous secret expeditions to collect ancient knowledge. New academies bloom with sudden genius, based on sources they cannot fully explain. Certain subjects, ancient acoustics, megalithic construction, pre-modern energy, hydrological engineering, unknown scripts, remain marginalized or quietly restricted. Folk memories across distant regions tell the same story of archivists, sealed vaults, and a lost civilization of knowledge. And finally, the name for that civilizational zone, Tartaria, is removed from the map. Each clue on its own is a curiosity. Together, they describe something else. The deliberate removal of the intellectual legacy of a forgotten civilization. A civilization whose fingerprints still mark our world in geometry, architecture, myth, and unexplained engineering, but whose libraries, the heart of its mind, were taken, hidden, or destroyed. Not by accident, not by time, by someone who understood what that knowledge could prove, and what it might undo. And so we are left with a silent question, echoing through empty halls and buried vaults. If the vanished libraries of the old world were ever found, intact, unedited, unclaimed, what kind of history would we discover we've been living in? In the end, all the clues point in the same direction. Something, or someone, deliberately erased the knowledge of a forgotten civilization. The buildings remain, the symbols remain, the geometry remains, but the libraries are gone. Whether that knowledge was hidden, destroyed, or absorbed by rising empires, one truth stands. Our history has been edited, and until those vanished archives are found, we are left with only fragments, whispers of a world far older, far more advanced, and far more connected than we were ever taught. The real question now is not what was lost, but why it was taken.